I couldn't wait. Hey, it's Romania Black. Yeah, I couldn't wait. I'm sorry. I will get to comments, I'm sure eventually. It will happen, but here's the thing. I wasn't going to watch this episode yet, but again, I watched an episode earlier this morning. I have the day off because it's snowing outside. We have a snow day and I'm stuck in my house. So I'm like, well, I'll watch this episode. And I ended up, it was like such an intense, crazy episode. It's already aired on this channel. So if you see me in this shirt in an episode that came out like 3 days ago on the channel, you'll know which one I'm talking about. But it was really, really sad and really depressing. And I was like, I need something good to balance what I've just watched. And I was like, what can I watch that I know guaranteed is going to hype me up, that I'm going to really enjoy? Ping Pong. And here we are. So last episode was wild. Wild, y'all. Last episode was insane. And basically we had the inner high preliminary start. Smile has already competed. Smile beat somebody, beat Suda. And who's off on the beach now. And not only did that, but Smile faced off against Kong in episode 3, lost, gave up the match, forfeit. We all know that Smile would have probably won, but forfeit the match because he didn't think he had as much stake in it, or at least that's my interpretation, as Kong. And meanwhile, Kurama is like, I want you to come to our school. I want you to come to Shiratorizawa, but you're also arrogant, and I don't know how I feel about that. So it's just like... Meanwhile, Peco is probably going to go up against his old friend from middle school that beat Smile in the middle school competitions that is now on Kurama's team. And it's just what I really like about ping pong, aside from the music, aside from the energy, the art form, all that good stuff. What I really like about this series are the characters, and I am a character-driven person. So if you give me a story with good characters that I want to latch onto, I am set. And so far, we are only 3 episodes into this very short series, but these characters already have they've sunk their grappling hooks into my heart, and they're dragging me along. Like I want Smile to come to a realization and learn a lesson and get that ambition poured back into his heart, but maybe it just wasn't time for it yet. But Kong's character, Kurama, Smile, Peco, I am so like Kong and Kurama. I want them to face each other. I want them to face each other so bad in this series, and I want to see what will happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I am so invested in these characters and how they are portrayed and how the story depicts them. They're so true to life. It's so real. I am in love. So with that being said, I'm super excited to dive into this episode. But before we start, I want to give a shout out to those on the philanthropy tier over on Patreon, to thank them so much for all of their support, because I really, really appreciate it. So a special shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Bryant Reed, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, to Danny Don Mai, to Devorin, to Eric, to Ichu, to Fisho, to Ghostly Turnip, as well as El Freya, Liam Poles, Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Nago, Nicholas, as well as Maroni W, as well as Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, Translucent Men, and Starman AA. Thank you all so much over on the philanthropy tier on Patreon. Thank you, patrons, and thank you those on YouTube who support me. I greatly appreciate all of your support. All of my love. I am so excited. The one thing I will say is that somebody had posted on the Discord, which just opened up for the series, being like, why is the OP different? And it was for episode 1. Why was the OP different? And so I was like, well, I'm watching it through the official site, but I guess somebody had also commented that they weren't done with production at the time the first 2 episodes came out. So that's why the OP was different. And I was like, oh, which, honestly, the animation style is so like, I don't want to use the word rough and ready, but it's so organic and kind of raw and feels almost incomplete in a way that you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it. You'd just be like, okay. And I have watched series before where the OP just took elements from the episodes themselves and incorporated into the OP. So that's what I thought it was. I thought it was just like that other series that I watched. I was like, oh, the OP just reflects the episode. Okay. And that would have been fine, but I really do like the OP, and the OP is such a bop. I love it so much. But anyway, we're not going to waste any more time. we're going to dive right into Ping Pong episode 4, baby. I can't believe this is like a third of the way through as of this episode. But we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my God. This episode was the fastest episode of anything I've watched in a long time. What the fudge, man? Oh my God. Oh, ping pong. Ping pong. 2 words that I did not think would get me this hyped up or excited in a long time. But damn, episode 3 was amazing, but this episode was such a good follow-up. It was so good. There is so much to talk about. It crammed as much as it could in its 22 minutes, and I'm like, oh my God. So we need to just dive in and talk about this episode because I am honestly floored. So I'm going to talk about our characters here. Obviously, we have Smile up here. Obviously, we have Peco. And completing, we have Sakuma doing our trifecta. And Sakuma being considered the professor of ping pong. Like you do. Like you do. The professor of ping pong, as you do, where he's like, don't fall for a simple spin like that. And then telling Smile that. And of course, Sakuma, I love that his nickname was Akuma, which is devil. So they gave him that nickname like when they were kids because he's a violent little turd, right? And like slapping Smile and everything. But then they're like, don't hit Smile. And Peco standing up for him, right? And so the 3 of these 2, he's like, but he just keeps sucking. Wow. And then seeing them like go forward when they 2 bash heads. So basically Smile starts out with like, he's basically starts out by learning from Peco and Sakuma and then growing his talent and it deciding to bloom, right? And starting to bloom and realizing that he does have talent in ping pong. That it starts out where he doesn't feel very confident, but he realizes very quickly that he's a fast learner and he ends up becoming good at ping pong. That he has talent that is latent, but he does not have any ambition whatsoever. And I could see why Sakuma would be very frustrated by Smile, because if you were someone that worked really, really hard and were really dedicated to winning and were doing all that you could to win, and you saw someone grow up with you that had no aspirations and that kind of sucked starting out, but then they got better and better and better and better, and you saw them have all this latent potential and get all this attention, but you're like, I'm the one that's been working this whole time, that would be very frustrating. And so I can understand where Sakuma's coming from, because he talks about all of the effort that he's put in. He's like, I put in the work, and he wants to be recognized for it. So that's why he went to the most prestigious school. He wants to be recognized. He wants to earn his place. He wants his efforts to be rewarded. And so he's mad at Smile for getting Kazuma's attention, because he's like, but I'm the one that taught him. And it's like, yeah, right? That is so frustrating, isn't it? So yeah, and then you have Peco, who has lots of ambition, but he is not as hard a worker. He has talent, but he is kind of lazy and compliant. Because that's all Peco's thing. And he's very easily emotional about whether he wins or loses. Whereas Smile does not seem to care. Smile does care. I will maintain that Smile does care. He just doesn't want to admit it. He doesn't want to admit it because he doesn't want to be associated in the same field as some of the players and the environments that they're in. He wants to kind of deny that. But I would argue that I think Smile does care because he's still watching the games. If he really was going to just quit and walk away and didn't care, he would have done so. Whenever the coach said, well, then just quit, and he's like, fine, I will. Then he would have just left and went home, right? But the fact that he stays behind to watch Peco's game, to watch the finale, to me, that tells me that he does care. He just doesn't know what to do with that. And so then, but I love the idea that we have the three of these kids who have grown up together. And then I love when we watch the playback. Y'all can argue that the playback is poor animation, but I feel like it's done intentionally. They intentionally make it look so rigid and boring because they're making a point. And the coach is like, you weren't even trying. You didn't even try. And Sakuma and Kazama know that he wasn't trying either. But I love that the coach calls them out on it. They're like, why do you make such a lame return? And then that moment where they're like the match to Kong, and Kong's like, yeah, that moment where Smile's sitting there and he gets smacked. Uh-huh. That was such a moment because it very much is the coach being, I'm sure the coach knew in that moment that it wasn't going to make a damn difference, that it was just going to piss Smile off, but I don't blame the coach for smacking him. I mean, I would never do that myself as a coach. I'm not about that life, but I would definitely have chewed him out and been like, you knew what you were doing. Because it's one of those things where the coach is like, you may not care about this activity, but there are others on the team with you that do care. And so by you throwing that match, he's like, that is arrogance. And that is such privilege for you to have. He's like, you made it that far. And for you to just throw a match is insulting to your peers who were not able to be there in your place. It's insulting to your team because it shows you don't give a shit. And it's insulting to me because I put in time and energy. We always tell our students on the team, we're like, we need you to care about it more than we do. Because we care about it. We care about the activity. We care about their success. We care about them getting to experience what we've experienced as competitors. We care about it because, like the coach says, the coach knows what it's like to reach that summit and knows what that feels like and the accomplishment that gives and how that feels and how amazing it is. And I can relate to the coach because it's like you want your players to feel the same thing you felt. You want them to reach that point because you know that they deserve it and you know that they work hard and they can get there. He's like, you want as a coach for your competitors who have put in the work to get that reward. You want them to feel that accomplishment because you know how good that feels. And the coach here slapping him is like, you didn't try. Like, you could have won that easily. You could have beat Kong like it was nothing. And then Kazama doesn't have any mercy. Kazuma's like, no, I'm not going to go easy on you. Sorry. That's not how the world works. But the coach is like, you insulted your team because you didn't care. You insulted the hard work that they put in because you just kind of, it's like you're mocking them. It's like you're talking down to them being like, look how good I am. I didn't even have to try. And he's like, that's not fair to anybody. And that's being a bitch. And so I'm glad they slapped him. Now, of course, everybody's like, oh my God. And he's like, everyone involved in a game like that suffers. And I like that the coach isn't like, he's like, don't do that again. And of course, Smile, rather than saying, I won't or whatever, he's like, please not the glasses. Everyone knows better than that. I was like, bam, that's such a bitch line. Like, Smile is arrogant. He is so arrogant. He did not seem at all like he wanted to show any concern. I'm sure on the inside he was hurting, but him saying everybody knows that. And then, the players were like, well, that's a little harsh to blame him. And he's like, no, he threw that match. He won 2 games. He's like, no. And I like that Peco's off in the corner in the shadows because Peco knows. He knows he threw the match, right? He's like, this isn't a sport for guys dicking around without caring if they win or not. And he's like, do you want to quit? And Smile says, yes. And he's like, then quit. Then walk away. I love it. And they're like, wait up. Where are you going? And they're like, leave him be. And he's like, you're just a softie. Winning is what matters. Now, Peco says that. Peco says winning is what matters. The thing that I like most about this moment is the coach doesn't tell Smile necessarily that it's because he didn't win. There's a huge difference. Like the way that the coach handles the situation versus the way that Kaio's team handles the end of the tournament, there's a stark difference. And we're going to talk about that when we get to Kaio, the end of that tournament. But I feel like the coach, what I respect about him is he's like, it's not the fact that you lost that I'm mad about. He's like, if you gave it your all and tried your hardest and lost, I don't think the coach would have yelled at him. And the coach would have been like, well, you gave it your all. You tried. tough tits. This is life. You know, you don't always win. But I think it's the fact that he's like, you deliberately blew this round when there were so many others that would have gave it their all in that moment. He's like, you didn't even try. And I think that's why he's pissed. And I think the coach is in the right to do that. And I'm glad the coach just lets him go. He's like, because I think the coach knows he's not really going to quit. Also, I love Obaba, where she's like, is this giving you flashbacks to yourself over 50 years ago? Her actual name is Tamura, because it's Tamura's table tennis hall. And I like that he's like, oh, Tamura, you're here. I love that Tamura was a table tennis player too, and she was fearsome. I'm like, yes, please. Even though he's married to a woman, and I'm sure that they have a great marriage, I love the history that these two have, that they're like friends growing up, that he's like, you were really good at table tennis. And she's like, yeah. But she's right. She's like, Smile is not the type of person you can slap into submission. That's not how this works. I love the idea that she's like, he is kind of untamable. He's a wild stallion. You can't just throw a halter on him and expect him to go along with you. That ain't gonna work. And I think the coach knows that. And she's like, you were like that too, right? You were like that as well. And he's like, I know. He's like, yeah, I know that he's not like that. They call him Smile because he hardly ever smiles. That's the contradiction. Mm-hmm. And then we have the OP. Oh man, as much as I love the OP, we got a lot to talk about, so we got to get past it. Damn, this episode. The thing about it is, going into this moment, Kong knew that Smile let him win. Mm-hmm. And the coach tries to rile him up, being like, hey, you being sloppy is not going to work on Kazama. And Kong's like, he was in control of the whole game. And the coach tries to be like, oh, don't do that. Don't get in your head. Don't be an inner saboteur. And he's like, no, he lost on purpose. And he's like, no, he didn't. But even when the coach says no, he didn't, he has a frown on his face. Like Kong knows. He's like, I was not as good as Smile. I shouldn't. And there's that sense of, he's like, I shouldn't have been here. I shouldn't be here. It should be Smile, you know. So I can't believe that Kong and Kazama were facing in the semifinal. In the quarterfinal was Sakuma and Peco and Kong and Kazama. That was just the quarterfinal. And then the semifinal ends up being 2 members of Kaio and 2 members of Kaio. And the final is Kazama and the other, like, Kagami eyebrow from Grogu's basketball wearing guy. So Kaio basically just flooded the entire semifinal and final of the rounds, which we'll talk about later. But that is wild to me. That is wild. But yeah. But it's like, we have the quarterfinal match now between Kong and them. And so what's interesting is we have Peco and them examining each other's paddles. I guess this is part of it, that you examine the paddles and they're like, oh, wow, look at this. And they look at like how each of them are made. And they're like, times are a-changing. I really kind of like Sakuma's mentality of being like about evolution and about research. I mean, I really like that. I like that about his character, in that he's not rigid. He's like, no, times are changing and we have to go with the flow and we have to evolve as well. That's part of our journey. There's a huge caterpillar to butterfly metaphor in this entire series. And Sakuma kind of goes along with that, where he's talking about evolving with the game and how it goes. Whereas Peco, he talks about him being stagnant with the basics. Because, yeah, I mean, and that's something that sports anime talks about a lot that I really like, is a lot of times, what I like that this series does is, a lot of times in sports anime, you talk about how this series kind of flips it. Because I've watched series where people are like, as long as you can master the basics, that will set you apart and that will help you so far. And coaching forensics, coaching speech, I can attest to that, yeah, if you master the basics, that will take you a long freaking way. Because a lot of people don't master the basics, and by not doing that, they miss out on the essentials of what makes them a good speaker. And in this case with Peco, what makes you a good ping pong player is knowing those essentials. The trick is, once you've mastered the basics, once you get the basics down, then what do you do? How do you make yourself stand out? How do you make yourself better than the basics? How do you make yourself improve to where you have more to give than just knowing the basics. That's the trick. And with Pico's character, and what Sakuma kind of points out is he's like, you just know the basics and you think that's all there is to know. He's like, you're just complacent and stagnant with, oh, I've mastered the basics and I'm fast, but I don't have technique. I don't have evolution. I'm not evolving with the times and with players. And Sakuma's like, if you just rely on the basics and the old way of doing things, you're going to get left in the dust. And he's not wrong. That's kind of it. Yeah, there has to be an unpredictability about you in any activity, in any, whether it's athletic, whether it's sports, whether it's forensics, there has to be an unpredictability about you, or an unknown or an it factor if you're going to be successful. Because otherwise you're just going to blend in with everyone else, and the people that are advancing beyond the basics are the ones that are going to advance and stand out. And so, yeah, it's so true. I'm like, yes, you can apply this in so many different contexts for sports. But I don't think Sakuma is wrong in this. He's like, I've dreamed of playing you again. I love the fact that we have this rivalry between Peco and Sakuma that kind of gets explored in this episode. And they're both kind of like, neither of them are the protagonist or the direct antagonist. I would argue at this point, Kazama is the direct antagonist and Smile is the protagonist. But we'll talk about that in a second. But he's like, I've been waiting for this. I don't think you understand how much I've wanted to play you. Because for Sakuma, this is his chance at getting back and proving himself. And man, that little thing about him always being the best, the animation is just crazy. He's like, everything you did was sophisticated. And he's like, you always took the lead. I love this. I love seeing the three of them, Smile and Peco and Sakuma, or Akuma as they call him. I love the idea that Peco was the early bloomer / leader. Sakuma was like the ever evolving, like, workaholic. And then you have Smile, who is the one that has the hidden talent. Right? That's kind of what you have. You have Smile has the hidden talent and all the potential that is like ready to burst out of the chrysalis. You have Sakuma, who's the one that puts in the work and has been developing themselves and honing and sculpting themselves for years. And then Pico's the one who has a lot of natural ability, but doesn't put in the work. Right? So we'll talk about this as we go through the match. But yeah. But Sakuma, I love getting this perspective about him. Wherein they start the match. And honestly, like I said in the reaction, one thing that this series does that I did not anticipate with it is showing exactly how much athleticism is involved in table tennis. I mean, I would suck based on hand-eye coordination itself because I don't have good hand-eye coordination. So I would be bad from the get-go. But beyond high hand-eye coordination, the fact that there's all of these issues of stamina and of athleticism, like the moment that Sakuma started doing like the do-do, he wasn't putting in a lot of effort. Like it took effort to get him to return back to Peco, but he had figured out exactly how to hit that table and how to make it rise up in the air and fall at the exact time that he was putting in minimal effort. And it was taking Peco twice as much effort to not only figure out when the ball was going to drop, but return it. So he was just going circles around Peco. And what I love about it is that Peco was relying upon speed and the basics to just be consistent. And normally that would seem like it would be enough. But in Sakuma's case, he's like, I've done my research. I know how you play. I've played you for years. So I've figured out ways to counter where your weaknesses are. And also the moment that Peco was like, when it was 6-8 in the first match and he started like talking a big game, I'm like, one, Peco, you haven't even won the first set yet. Are you kidding? And two, I'm like, it's like sports anime rule number 1. You don't be the first one to brag about winning. You will guarantee lose if you do that. And then there we get, right? I also really like in this series how they make Peco so expressive. They really make him have a lot of expressions that are really cool to see. But yeah, he just wore him out. He just wore him out. it's so wild to watch it all go down. Like this match was so great, and then he ended up losing. Because it's like, it's one of those things where Peco talks about, where Sakuma looks at Peco and is like, you were always the golden child that got whatever you wanted, and you were always praised. And I love seeing like the brand new shiny paddles go to him, your rubber and rackets, and then seeing him like with the medals in his mouth, where he like had all the awards and everything. He's like, you were always this kid that got praised, and he's like, you got spoiled. And that's kind of the thing. I see a lot of parents do this with their kids. And when I was a kid, I kind of like, my parents did it for a little bit, because when I was a kid, I started showing cattle. And it's a competition. You show, if you've ever watched dog shows on TV, it's like exactly like showing a dog, but just with cows. It's hard to explain. But when I was a kid, my parents got me started showing livestock, and they immediately, right out the gate, got me like a nice cow. I got all the stuff, everything, and I won a lot of shows locally. But then my parents had me go to the bigger shows where I didn't win. Because it was kind of like, in a little pond, you win and you do really good in your local level, but then you go to the bigger pond, and it's like, oh, never mind, I'm not at that level yet. But what it did was it made me hungry to do better, right? It made me hungry to want to improve, because I wanted to do better. I wanted to compete at that same level as those people. And so it made me want to work for it, right? And I see a lot of parents and a lot of kids where they, right out the gate, like, let's just buy them the best animal. Let's get them top of the line, end of the line stuff. And let's just pour all this money into it. And all they do is win, 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 like ludicrous. But then when they get to a level that they lose, they're instantly put down. And they're like, well, why didn't I win? And instead of having that hunger, they just get discouraged. And I feel like Peco kind of goes through that, where Sakuma's like, you're always used to winning and getting everything handed to you, and it's made you stagnant and complacent. And he's like, it takes someone losing to get that hunger to want to work towards the top. And we'll talk about that with the coach, right? But I love just Peco like rapping at his hair and everything. Oh, he's like, I had to watch you show off all those medals and that you went around winning. You don't know what it was like for me seeing them. I also love him like smacking the paddle against his ass. It's like, Sakuma's like, you bragged and you were so, and he does it all the time in the table tennis hall. He's like, you're a century behind me and all this. And Sakuma's like, you don't know what that was like. And so he's like, so I put in the work. And I was like, no, I'm going to beat you. He's like, so I'm evolving and doing all of this so that he's like, as time goes by, it's not just about talent and environment. Eventually, hard work has its say. And I love that, because it's so true. Like, we've talked about it in this series, raw talent can get you so far, and it's frustrating. But I like Sakuma being an example of, if you keep working at it and you do the due diligence and put in the work, you will eventually, you could have the last laugh. I love it. He's like, you just got to put in the work for it. You can't just, and that's to say, I think Smile is kind of this in between Peco and Sakuma, right? Where Smile has a lot of natural talent like Peco, but he's had to put in the work like Sakuma. And that's why Sakuma gets frustrated, because he's like, well, I put in more work than Smile. And I'm like, well, that's not how it goes, though. There's a balance there. But I definitely think that Sakuma gets to the point of saying that my hard work and effort versus your stagnation and relying on your raw talent is going to eventually pay dividends. He's like, you're not nearly as good as Kazama. So he's like, I love that Sakuma's basically like, there's no point in you advancing because you aren't going to beat him. I'm the one that deserves to go. Your game is still dripping with laziness and compromise. Love that line. Oh, Sakuma really worked his way up in this episode for me. I really, really liked Sakuma and facing Smile with all of this. I really, really liked it. It was great. He's like, you can do anything. And Smile watching. And here's the thing. I feel like, the coach pointed out to Smile, he's like, you're not doing Peco any services by intentionally losing to him. And I thought about this at this moment in the game, that when Sakuma's talking about his laziness, I wondered if Smile maybe realized in that moment that, oh, I've probably contributed to that because I have let, he's like, I've probably contributed to that because I've been playing against Peco, but I let Peco win and I'm not challenging Peco. And Smile's like, well, I'm doing it because I don't want to make my friend feel bad. And I don't want to make him feel like he wants to quit table tennis because I don't want him to quit table tennis. I want us to play together. But at the end of the day, if you want to play table tennis, you're going to play it. And like we've talked about, Peco has a tendency where he gets really easily emotional, but he keeps going back because he likes the activity, right? But like the coach is saying, you don't want to insult your opponent. And I feel like Smile, it's an insult to Kong, going easy on him. It's an insult to Peco, going easy on him, because eventually they're going to face somebody like Sakuma, or in Kong's case, they're going to face somebody like Kanama or Kazama, and they're not going to go easy on them. They're going to be like, I respect you as an opponent, so I'm going to do my best. And so then it will make Peco and Kong seem foolish if they're like, oh, so y'all took pity on us and went easy on us? Oh. You know? So I feel like this is a lesson for Smile in watching this tournament by itself. But yeah, Sakuma's like, I ain't gonna take it easy on you. And the match point is for Sakuma. And I feel bad for Peco because I can tell Peco enjoys it. And he's like, the only point, and Pico's like, the point of playing is for winning. And I would argue with that. I don't think the point is to win. And I think the coach for their team would agree. And that's how we're going to talk about the differences between Kaio and their team and Katase or whatever or Karase or however you say their name for their team. I think the big difference is the coach is like, winning is not what matters, but it's wanting to win. It's the desire to do your best and be your best of yourself and to challenge yourself and try to help your team. He's like, it's all about the team spirit. It's about doing your best. It's about wanting your personal best. It's about wanting to win and being encouraged to do the best you can versus whether you win or not. Because that's what we tell our students on the team. We're like, if you go in every round and you do your personal best every time, and if you don't win, you got no regrets. It's like there's no regrets if you go in and do your best every time. And if somebody just liked this speech more than yours, you can't do anything about that. But if you go in and you don't give it your all, then you are leaving regrets on the table. You are leaving things to be desired. And that's not the best you can give. So it's like, what's the point of working towards something if you're not going to give it your all? Also, I love the fact that this anime has like whenever characters reach out, it does something with the use of distance, like the distance between the ping pong table and the player when Sakuma reaches out to like rub, the head of Peco, like the way it looks like a Stretch Armstrong, like the way that distance is portrayed in this series is done really stylistically and I like it a lot. Also, damn, he's like, quit the sport now if you're just going to coast along, Peco. Man, the way that he walks away looking like such a diva with his head held so high. Sakuma, you queen. I swear. I swear, y'all. But the thing is, I don't think Pico's going to give up. I don't think that's his jam. Because he's like, damn it. And the episode is called The Only Way to Be Sure You Won't Lose is to Not Fight. But is that living? Is that living truly? Also, the fact this episode number 4, which 4 is traditionally in Japan like a number representing death. It's a lot of deaths of dreams this episode. Pico's time is over. Kong's time is over. Like Smile's time is over. There's a lot of deaths happening in this episode to go for Kaio's team. Also, freaking love Obaba, our hall winner, and we have the caterpillar coming out of the chrysalis, right? So she says that she's like, it's crazy how I used to play like my life depended on it. I even wore a victory headband and everything. Like she was like, I was so desperate, and he's like, you were lovely. And terribly strong at the same time. I love the history of these two. Look at them. He's like, it was cool. I liked it. I was like, damn, what could have been? She's like, winning was everything back then. I freaking love the history. And then we see him with the butterfly wings. If a player lost, they'd attacked their very character. I love that obviously the butterfly representation is of the coach. That it's his past of him emerging from the chrysalis. And they talk about like back then, like back in our day, people were really, really mean to you if you didn't win, and it would attack your character. The winners write history and the losers are history. She's like, I've seen that type of thinking wreck a lot of people. So I feel like with her case, with Obaba's case, she talks about the idea of winning is everything and how that can destroy people. And I would agree with that. I would agree that the winning is everything mentality, not good. No, it's not healthy at all. And I can kind of see where she kind of empathizes with Smile, because she's like, she kind of maybe respects the fact that Smile's not all about winning, that he's just playing for fun and because he enjoys it, and that should be the heart of it. Like, you should be playing because you enjoy the activity. And so he's like, well, you know, it's still the same principle now. And she's like, that kid is different. He's incredibly talented, but has no interest in winning. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, that's how these things go. Talented people who know themselves never crave anything. So I like it. I like this idea. So the coach says that talented people, talented and aware people, do not crave. And that's hard to deal with because, you know, if you're like, you're talented, it's like, well, you're going to let that go to waste, right? And then he talks about the merging. It's like people who don't know themselves are always the ones who struggle hard to win because they want to prove something. So he says there's a struggle, right? There's talented people who are aware and don't crave to win, which is problematic in itself. But then there are also unsure people who are out to prove themselves. But that in itself can become a hurdle, right? If you're not sure of yourself and you don't know what to do, then in the process of trying to win, you know, it can cause you to struggle because you're not sure of yourself and you still are lacking that confidence. And so the coach is like, I just want to take him there. That's all. I want to get him to the summit. He's like, I know he can make it, and I want him to get there to see if he thinks it's worthwhile. He's like, if he gets there, something in him will change. And then Obaba's like, well, are you sure? Bullying him is, you know, may not get you anywhere. It may not work out for you. I love these two. Their back and forth is so good. They're amazing. And then we see the butterfly, the little moth that comes out. But I like the coach. I feel like the coach is like, look, I've been there. I just want him to get to the top. I want him to see. He's like, I want to get him at the top of his potential as far as he can go. And then if he gets up there and he doesn't change, then I've done my job. I've done all I can do. It's up to him now. But I want to try to get him there. And I would agree with that. I would think that whenever I coach, I want those people to have as much. At tournaments, I am more nervous now as a coach for the people that I'm like coaching on a team than I ever was as a competitor, than I ever was. And it's not because I want them to like do good in my place or do some kind of weird shadow parent shit like that. No, it's just that you want them to experience that joy. And when you know they're capable of it, you want the best for them. And it's so frustrating when they don't see it. And you're like, no, but you've got this potential. You can do this. And when they don't see it, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. So yeah, the one coach says good work, which we'll tie back to that at the end of the episode. But he's like, where is Kazama? And he's like, where he always is, in the can. Now, I love this scene because they're like, is he constipated, sir? And the guy laughs. And he's like, oh, no. When he gets near time for his matches, he always holes up somewhere. And you see him in the stall with the urinal and the toilet, but he's just letting it flush. And he's just staring down at it. That scene, that shot of him just standing there looking down at the toilet is so damn good. And here's the thing. I know exactly what this is like. And the moment Cosmo's doing that and it changes from purples to greens, which are complementing colors, and they're my two favorite colors. But him just standing there staring at the toilet, like having this moment to himself. I fully understand this. I was very competitive when I did speech, but I wasn't like, there are different types of people that are competitive, and we talk about this as coaches. There are people that they thrive in different environments. There are people who, to be the best of yourself when you're a competitor, there's different ways to go about it. I was a quiet competitive. And there are people that are social competitive. They're just like, they're social butterflies. They talk to everybody and they're like, hey, how's it going? And they're extroverted and they get their energy from that. And then they go on and do their thing. My thing was kind of like what Kazama does is, I didn't ever, when I went to a tournament, I didn't want to be like totally social. I needed to be in the zone and I needed to kind of focus. And so I know a lot of competitors, myself included, that before a round, I would go to the bathroom, whether I had to use the bathroom or not, but I would go in there to kind of get my bearings and to kind of gather myself and be like, okay, now it's time to go and do this thing. And then I'd go out and I would, be courteous and nice and be like, hey, how are you? And if people would talk, be like, mm-hmm. But I didn't seek people out for conversation. I was like, I'm on a mission and that's to win. And so I'm going to do my thing. And then be polite and sit down and be like, okay, we're good now. And that's how I was, because I'm naturally introverted. So I want to gather that energy and charge myself up and amp myself up and then go out and do my thing, right? So I totally understand and respect what Kazama does in this moment. So it's Kazama versus Kong, and he's had 68 times in a row that he's won. He hasn't lost in the last 68 games. Holy shit. Well, now it's 70 because he won this. And so 69. So the semifinal was the 70th win. So I guess the 71st win he's won in a row. Yeah. And my thing was, once I started in a round and I went up to compete, it was on. I'm like, nope, competitive. Let's go. And if you're going to beat me, you better beat me. So I was like, that was my thing. And I love it. And Smile just watching him being like, oh, a monster, eh? And the thing about it is, Kazama is not, what I love about Kazama is that he's respectful. He is not out here talking shit. He's not here trash talking. He's like, I have a job to do. I'm going to do my best. So let's go. I love it. And they're like, Kazama, look this way. I like the one person's like, are you my lover? And he's like, it's a lively crowd. And so then we have, I'm assuming that that's the girlfriend. That's the girlfriend watching that has her hair up with the hat on, the glasses. I think that's the girl, or not the girlfriend, the cousin. We're going to talk about that, but the cousin watching. The cousin watching is interesting. It looked like they were recording the match. So here's the trick with, we're going to put Kong up here. We're going to put Kong, and then we're also going to put Kazama. So we find out in this episode that Kazama is a cousin or a nephew, one of the others, to the coach. That's a pretty big deal because that's instant like nepotism. That's instantly like, oh, an added pressure. You're not only the star of the team, but you're also my nephew. So don't fudge this up for the family on top of your team. So Kazama already has this pressure of being like family with the coach, who is also the CEO of this entrepreneurial industry that their high school is running. Also, he is tied directly to this high school that we will talk about later, has a lot of funding and a lot of stuff tied up into it. So there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And that makes me respect Kazama even more, because to have all that pressure and not let it get to him and to still be kind of humble like he is saying a lot. But his Yuri is his platonic bestie, which we'll talk about, and his cousin. We're going to talk about this in the comments because I have something from Haikyuu I want to bring up, so we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But my thing is, was she recording the matches so that her dad could see and see how he's doing? Because the one guy with the eyebrows, the huge eyebrows, notices her, right? Because she has what looks like, it looks like she's holding a blanket, but also I was like, is the blanket over a phone? Or is she just like wanting him to win? Because Eyebrow Man that's on the team notices her and I think realizes who she is. But damn, this match was insane. And I like that Sakama's smiling the whole time watching, like, oh yeah, he's gonna win. How fast his reaction time is. The coach is like, well, shit. We were not expecting this. I love every pose, every moment. Oh my God. And Smile being like, a monster, huh? I find it interesting that, because I wonder in one part if Smile, on the one hand, is like, is this what people are comparing me to? Because he's like, should I be compared to Kazama? Do I even deserve to be compared to Kazama? Do I want to be compared to Kazama? There was a part of me that wondered if Smile was like, I'm not like this guy. How can I be called? I don't want to become like this guy. I don't know if I want that. But then there was another part of me that was like, or does Smile view Kazama as a challenge that he is the hero, Enter the hero, wants to face and stop? We'll have to see where we go with the series with that. But I thought that was really kind of cool. But yeah, also him looking kind of like King Kong coming out with the paddle and everything. Damn, this is just insane. And him firing back with the dragon as well. Freaking love it. Also, damn, Kong's expressions as he is like served this were like, it became a horror anime for a hot second. A horror anime. It was insane. Like the lightning and everything. He has to have a hole in his defense somewhere. No, not really. Doesn't seem to be. He's like, somewhere there needs to be. And he's like, nope. I love it. I love that he comes out with some Mace Windu lightning, Force lightning. I love it. And the fact of the distance, again, we talk about like Sakama putting his arm out to give the head pats to Peco. And then you have where it looks like Kong's arm is a mile long as he tries to chase the ball. Like, it's just that idea of distance to show how far Kazuma's skill is from here. Because then you see him like slowly lose trajectory and not be able to keep up. God, and the net being like, that shot of him with the net and he just looks huge in that moment, like he's overpowering him. Oh my God. The visuals in this episode were insane. I loved this so much. And I loved the purple dragon against the airplane. Is so good. Like the airplane representing Kong and the purple dragon representing Kazama. I love it. He's like, and I don't want to end it here. That to me, in that moment, kind of went back to the coach's words about how people that are talented and aware don't crave versus the unsure people that are trying to prove themselves. Kong, despite how he has shown himself in this moment, is the one that's unsure and he's trying to prove himself, right? Which can be relatable to Smile. But then Kazama is also relatable to Smile in that Kazama is talented. I'm sure he's put in the work, but he's talented. And he doesn't have to crave because he just knows and is assured of himself. But there's all these extra pressures on there too, so we can't quite say that, but it's more complicated than it seems, right? Also, did the animation at some point like make Kazama I don't want to get sexual with it, but it seemed like with the shorts and everything, it almost seemed pronounced. Anybody else think that? Is it just me? I really like Kazama's character a lot. I really love Kong. Kong is a great diva, but Kazama, he's so interesting. And then the idea that we see Kong with his mom like waving as he leaves. Kong also shows this softer side of himself to the coach, where Kong was like, you know, my mom was from the country. I left home when I was like 8 and she saw me like once a week to give me food and I just want to do her proud. Like that part, and then seeing like the soup and everything, that part, and seeing him train and seeing like, not only seeing him train, but then there's a shot of his house getting torn apart, like him in the neighborhood, like he's doing this to help benefit his family. Like suddenly you wanted to root for Kong like it was an underdog story because you're like, oh damn, wait. Now we know the full story about Kong and you feel so bad for him, and all the munchies and the high chews. Oh, Ace of the Diamond, the high chews, and him traveling across the sea to Japan to face Kazama. And Kazama's like, oh, by the way, I don't care about your backstory. I'm going to do my thing because that's how it is. And then I love how it seemed like there was so much distance between them, but then in that moment, you boom, they're right there at the table, and there's not that much distance at all. Oh, this series work. I freaking love it. Loved it. Loved it completely. There's so many options for the thumbnail. And the coach smiling, being like, yeah, he's not going to win. And I like, in that moment, the coach smiling, and he looks over, and the coach is smiling like, hey, you do what you can. At this point, I can't tell you anything. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. He's just smiling at him like, look, what can we do in this moment? I loved everything about this match. It was all I wanted. And I like that at the end, Kong is smiling. Like, I like the coach and him smiling at the end. He's just like, I did what I could. And see, that's kind of the point of the one coach. He's like, as long as you tried your best, what can you do about that? It's just talent goes on to it. So yeah, so then we find out that they basically just overloaded the semifinal and final. They just loaded it up. And Smile watching all of them. Smile watching the whole thing. Him dominating in that moment. And then we see, yep, 11-4. Oof, it's like it wasn't even close. And then we see in the semifinals, the two playing one another. So the one girl leaves. So semifinal match, we had Sakuma and Sanada. And Sanada's the one with the crazy eyebrows. Sanada wins. And then we have Kazama versus Uesugi. And Kazama wins. And then we have Kazama, and Eyebrow Man is Sanada. So Sanada is our guy with the insane eyebrows, right? And then Kazama. What I do appreciate and respect is that in that final match, because they're both from the same high school, in that final match, you could see a school sometimes like go, like take it down a notch because they're like, well, it's just us versus us. Who cares? But they don't. They treat each other like I always tell our team, I'm like, if you both end up in the final together, you still go at it like 100% and give it 100% your all, right? Because you're representing the team and you're representing yourself. So I do respect that even when it was down to the two of them and they were just facing each other, they gave it their all and still pushed the limits of each other. Like that was really respectful. I liked that. But Purple Dragon wins, baby. Purple Shinron wins it. Kazama is so intense. Damn. And everybody's like, 71 wins. But then, yes, Nada's like, okay. All right. And they're going to the championships. They're going to nationals, baby. Ryuichi Kazama, Masayuki, Kinji, and Manaba Sakuma. The four. So I guess the top four end up getting to go to nationals. The top four players go and their team goes. Well, there's only one team going to nationals from this area, and that's Kaio. Okay. I also like the use of space. So when Kong and the coach have this little talk after the match, it's like in this little secluded area. I like that we have our losers. Like Smile is off on the bus by himself. Peco is on the steps. He doesn't even get on the bus. He's still lamenting. And I love that the shade was purple around Peco, showing like the weight of Kaio over him. And then Kong is like over here. So Kong thinks that he's done with table tennis. He doesn't see how he can go back. And the coach is like, look, you're not done. You might be done playing this year, but that doesn't mean you're done completely. Like, it'll be okay. Also, the fact that Kong had a locket with his mom's picture of him as a kid winning. Why are you making Kong a softie now? Like, in a third of the way through the match. Why? What I'm really sad about is I really am going to be sad if, like, this is the last we see of Kong in this series, because I know it's only 11 episodes. If this is the last we see of Kong, I'm going to be really sad because I really like his character, and that's going to suck if that's the last time we get to see him. Not fair. Not fair, y'all. Don't tell me if it's the last time we get to see him or not. Don't tell me. Let me find out. If it is, I'm going to be sad, but I don't want to find out till the very, very end. So we'll see. We'll see. But that is sad. Also, when he was talking about all of the Haichu and all the candies that his mom brought him, I was like, well, Peco would have liked that because Peco's the candy kid. But what I loved about this scene was that he says his mom kept bringing him food every week, but he's like, I just wanted her homemade food. She kept bringing him food from the factory that she worked at, but he's like, I just wanted her cooking, and that's all. I'm like, that's so sad and so sweet. Like, you didn't like anything that she brought? And he's like, well, her homemade wontons were great. Oh, I love that scene of just the two of them sitting there. Also, the chair, like the size of the chairs and everything being exaggerated. It's such a good moment. He's like, I used to dream that I'd lose my keys. Oh. And then the coach is like, look, your life just begun. You've only reached the starting line. And then he's like, no, I'm done for. Like, I didn't win the tournament. And he's like, I don't mean table tennis. He's like, I'm talking about life. Like, life doesn't end just because you didn't win a tournament. And that's something else, like the coach that I work with for our team, he always tells students, he's like, the sun will rise tomorrow, whether you win or lose. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. Your life's not over. You'll move forward. It's going to be okay. And I'm glad the coach, he's like, this isn't just your coach talking, but a friend who knows you well. I wish I knew more about their relationship. I was like, clearly the one coach, he probably knew Kong from the past, because why else would Kong go to that specific school unless they had history? But still, yeah. So then we have Peco on the steps by himself. Poor Peco. I feel bad for him. And Smile is about to go to him, but then gets called over by Kazama. And so I'm very curious. And he's like, well, aren't you going back to school? He's like, yeah, for more practice. And Smile's like, well, that's really hardcore of you. And he's like, oh, well, they're all dim-witted and useless. And I was like, ooh, they don't realize it, which makes it even worse. And he's like, I'm sure you understand. This part was interesting because Smile's like, what? Because I usually respect Kazama as being like this noble and humble guy, but he kind of pulls a move here where he's like, oh yeah, the guys on my team, they're all kind of useless. And I'm like, oh, wait, what? I thought you were the humble white knight, but you just called them. I was like, are you trying to appeal to Smile because you think Smile thinks the same of all of his fellow players? Are you trying to like act a role in this moment? Because Smile doesn't think that the other people on the team are useless. He doesn't think he's better than them. He actually, kind of feels bad that he's better than them is the thing. And so Kazama almost is trying to like act like he's trying to bribe Smile to joining, being like, oh, well, you know how useless your teammates are and how they're not benefiting you. And Smile's just like, actually, I like our club because of the way it is and because of the way it's set up. But that's not what Kazama thinks. And so he says, I could make you a comfortable place at Kaio if you wanted. And Smile's like, what? And everything he describes to Smile, in my head, I'm going, that is Smile's nightmare. Smile likes the club that he's in because they don't make him do things, because he can do it at his own pace, and because they don't bother him, right? And they don't set expectations for him. It's the expectations the coaches set on that pisses him off. So whenever Kazama starts on this thing being like, Kaio was founded by a former table tennis player and, everything, and it's passionate about the sport. I love the color purple. Purple and green and shades of purple and green are my favorite. The nonstop putrid purple that looks like Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers just vomited all over this place. I would probably get annoyed with that purple after a while. That's a lot of purple. You're not going to put like a black accent or silver in there. Oh no. He's like, yeah, and it's passionate about the sport. We've dedicated practice space around the clock open and international coaches that support us every morning and evening. And our practices are filmed in HD and analyzed. Instantly, that is not what Smile wants. Smile would be like, ew, no. It's like, we don't want to be. He's like, I don't want to be analyzed. We have machines that can produce almost any shot that you want and machines that collect the balls, and equipment is provided for free. All of this would sound like a dream to some people, but to Smile, this is a nightmare. He's like, I'm already labeled a robot and I have to do something with that persona. Why would I join the TS100s for this? No. He's like, no, this sounds terrible. And not only is it all first rate, but you can use as much as you like. And he's like, and we don't do rubber care, which Smile's like, every 3 to 4 days, you can select a few of the best rubbers from a mountain of choices. To me, that is excess. That is excess, and it really is spoiling them in a lot of ways, right? I kind of like teams that have to have some grit under their nails. They got to work for it, and it makes you want to root for them as underdogs. This is like 2 teams in Ace of the Diamond that I'm not going to spoil and say, but I'm like, ooh, y'all just have the highest technology, huh? Isn't that the case, huh? Which is interesting, right? You should come to Shiratorizawa. But yeah, everything he says they're trying, he's like, and obviously the school will help you develop equipment that suits you. He's like, you want a laser cut paddle with a dragon on it? We can set you up. And there's a muscle training, a gym. Like, our trainers follow the latest sports science to understand our bodies and keep them in top shape. It's just like, and the nutritionist specialized meals. Basically, Ego from Blue Lock was like, I like this place. But yeah. He's like, everything is regulated. There's even like a pod for tanning or whatnot, or evaluating. Insane. And they always have their eyes fixed on our distant futures. That's another thing too that I feel Smile would absolutely loathe, is the idea that everything's micromanaged and everything is already predetermined for you. Like, that just sounds like the polar opposite of everything Smile stands for. So, and they even support us overseas on trips. And there's a library where you can look up all the competitions and research. And if someone asks, they'll go record any match you want anywhere in the world. So also that's kind of like, oh, so they'll just go record you matches? Is that legal? What? So obviously you can't get to nationals or onto the world stage all by yourself. But I'm sure Smile's also like, yeah, but I also don't want to work for a bought out team either. I'm like, ooh, so interesting. The philosophies that are thrown out here. He's like, you have talent. And Katase, not Karase. Katase isn't worthy of you. You belong at Kaio. And I feel like Smile's response would be, you don't get to decide who's worthy of me. I choose who's worthy of me. I'm very curious if this is the catalyst to get Smile to up his game at Katase, is the fact that Kazama tried to order him around. If he's like, well, because Smile is very much the type of person, as we talk about at the beginning of this episode, if you try to get him to do something, he's going to be like, actually, bitch, no, and do the exact opposite, right? So I feel like Kazama trying to urge him, it's going to be like an Oikawa moment, being like, this is my worthless pride. No, I'm going to stay at Katase. But we'll see. This series has surprised me so far. It's really surprised me. And he's like, oh, don't worry. I'll come pick you up one day. Count on it. And Smile's like, sure thing, Jan. He's like, good luck at the championships. I like he completely dismisses him. Like, no, actually, no. But yeah. Everybody thinks he's in the bathroom, but Sakuma's like, Sakuma saw him up there talking to Smile. And so did Sonata. Now, this part here, where the coach with the all black eyes says, your play was sloppy. You jerks think you're so good you can pull punches against weaker players. And they won the top 4 slots. Don't let winning make you cocky. It won't help you at nationals. And there's a way to have said that. There's a way to have said that and for it to have worked, because we've been in that position before. Our team does really good normally. And that's always a struggle as a coach, is when your team does well in a smaller pool, but then you go to nationals, you want to make sure that they don't get cocky and they don't get arrogant, and they keep in sight the idea that they're going to be stronger schools that they're going to face. So they have to keep on their A game. Like, it's a fine balance as a coach and as a team to make sure that that is illustrated, but that you're also not doing what this coach does. Because I've seen teams like this team, and it's not good. I've seen teams like that, where winning is the only thing that matters. I'll give you all an example, and I've said this in other series too, but there was a tournament that the team I was competing on went with this other team, and we got to share a charter bus because our team was a little bit poorer. We were always very underdogs. And so our team was a little bit poorer, and we did not have enough money to afford a charter bus to ourselves. But this big elite private school, this private university, they had a charter bus, and they're like, well, you guys can come to the tournament with us. And we're like, oh, cool. And it was a long tournament. Like, it took us a day to drive there. It was like we drove from Illinois to Texas, and it was like a 22-hour bus ride, right? And so we got on the bus, but when we got on, there were bags separating our portion of the bus from their portion of the bus. And we were like, oh. So we didn't get to talk to them. We just all rode down as two separate entities on the same space. So we got to the tournament. We had a lot less on our team, and we got like 5th, I think, in the tournament. We got like 5th, and we were ecstatic. We were like, yeah, top 5, did our thing. All right. Yeah, we were excited. We were over the moon. Their team got 2nd at the tournament. And the whole bus ride back, we were partying. We were celebrating. We did our best. We got 5th place. We each had our own little accomplishments personally. It was great. It was a great time. Their coach yelled at them and told them they had to ride the whole bus ride back in silence to learn their lesson for not winning. And I remember getting back and telling my coach, being like, I'm glad I'm not on that team. Because the team that I'm on, we did our best. And even though we didn't win, we had fun and we felt a sense of accomplishment. That team, even us getting 2nd, would have felt terrible. And I would have felt like a bad person. And I'm like, it's not worth that. No. So this coach yelling at them the way that he is, I'm like, it's not worth that. That sucks. No. And I could see why Smile would be like, absolutely, I don't want to be on that. So I'm curious why Sonata keeps looking at the car pulling up. This red car pulling up, though, I'm like, ooh. I'm like, oh, is this Revolutionary Girl 10 all of a sudden? But yeah, she pulls up. Yuri, when did you get here? And she's very cute. And they're like, you can go back in Yuri's car, Ryuichi. And he's like, yes, sir. And that's the coach's daughter. Yeah, she's in TV commercials. Ah, the nepotism. I'm wondering if Sonata likes her. Does Sonata like her? Or does he suspect something's up? I'm curious about this. But then they say, Kazama, you lucky dog. He's living with her at the president's house. And they're like, jerk. I love the one guy that says, how dare he have a life? And that was Sonata that said that. And they're like, Ryuichi and Yuri are cousins, and their relationship is platonic. So they're like, you're kidding. They're like, no way do I believe that. Fathers are blind. And they're like, you'll pay for that in laps. Get on the bus. Okay, real quick. There's a pair of characters in Haikyuu that have kind of the same hair color as Yuri, and the other one has black hair. That a lot of people wanted to ship in Haikyuu, and then the author revealed, like, in the final hour that they were related. And everybody was like, what? So this very much felt like that moment. I was like, yeah. So I'm curious. I feel like she was videotaping Kazama for the coach, and maybe Sonata's onto it. Maybe Sonata likes Yuri. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But yeah, they all get on the bus, and then the loudspeaker announces it's the end of the day. So I like the idea of Kong leaving, and Smile gets on the bus leaving, just like the regular. Like, we have Kaio getting on the charter bus. Smile gets on the regular public bus. How much more emphasizing can you get? And then poor Peco, who's crying, is contemplating what to do, and him all alone. Like, that sucks. I hate that. I like the idea of Peco and Kong's dreams getting shattered as one plane goes one direction and then Peco's on the steps facing the other way. Oh my God! So good! So good, y'all! It's so good! I love this episode so much! Yes, please. Yes, please. It's so freaking good. I love it. So yeah. Talked for over an hour about that too. Ah! I'm very curious to know about Sonata and what his deal is with Yuri. If he suspects something or knows something we, the audience, don't know yet, we'll find out. I'm going to be really sad if this is the last we see of Kong. I'll be honest. I won't be surprised if it's the last we see of Kong and he was just this couple. He came in for a few episodes like a whirlwind, taught a lesson, and is now going to go off and do his own thing. But I won't be surprised if maybe he tries to go visit Smile one more time before he leaves to be like, hey, I know you went easy on me. Bitch, don't do that. And then leaves. I'm curious to know what Peco's going to do, and I'm curious to know what Smile is going to do, because I don't think Smile's going to legit quit. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm going to be curious to see what his next move is going to be and what we're going to do from here. Because obviously, none of them are going to finals. Kaio's going to finals. But I'm going to be curious to know, like, what do we end up getting from this series moving forward? Maybe Smile's going to join Kaio and shave his head, but I highly doubt it. So, Anyway, this episode was amazing. I can't wait to hear your thoughts down below. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more ping pong. Bye.